Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, the youth ministry podcast, all about serving youth ministry, whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Balhamas. I'm joined by my fellow host and very good friend,
Kyle Gray. Josh, how you doing today?
Good, man. Good. We're, I don't know if you guys are watching. If you aren't, you could be on our YouTube channel. You'll notice there's a 2-cam today.
Wow, Josh,
which means
we're getting back there, buddy.
Well, it's going to auto switch back and forth, so you won't see reactions really in the same way. You'll see us individually as we talk,
as we teach.
And
Josh, I feel like
we've had that conversation.
I feel like you teach. Okay, so what happens with both of us talking at the same time? Will it be like split screen, or will
it'll
it
go back and forth? So we're using, actually, I mean, as everybody is these days, artificial intelligence.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Now look at me.
I don't know. We'll see. I haven't used it yet, so
that's great.
It might look different than I think. It's called Autopod. It'll automatically cut.
This reminds me of that Old Spice commercial. Look at you, man. Look back at me. Look at you, man. Look back at me. Now look at these diamonds in my hand. You know, like
that'll be like that potentially.
That's awesome.
You can also set to like how often it switches back. Like it won't jump back and forth unless there's a reaction that's longer than like 2.5 seconds or something like that. So I have to set it all up.
So I'm realizing now, if it switches back and forth, we'll find out who interrupts who more.
We'll also just see who talks more. We can actually like gauge that. I'll be able to look at the timeline, just see who has the most conversation.
And you as our audience can say, we want more Josh. We want more Kyle.
There's a poll below right now. You can vote. Who talked the most?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
So we're in the midst of camp. So if you hear noises, if you hear my radio go off, we're in camp. You're not listening to this during camp because this is saved for later, but just so you know, welcome to the madness. Now, Josh, I can be honest with you. Life, sometimes people get into events like this and they're like, oh, this time is just crazy. I feel like all of life can be crazy.
I absolutely feel that way. Yeah, life's always a little crazy. Even in the moments where you're like, well, what is it? Parents just look at each other and say, oh, once we get through this season, it'll calm down a little bit. And you just over and over and over again. And then one day you just realize you're retired. And even then, if you're ministering and doing well with your life, then even when you're retired, you're going to be busy.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're still discipling and being involved in your church.
Well, and again, I still go back to the whole point. I am in charge of my schedule.
Yeah.
You are in charge of your schedule. Now, in fact, I was talking to a couple this week that is going through some stuff, and I looked at one of them and I said, "There's only 2 people that can decide if you're in a relationship: you and that other person."
Sure.
You can allow other people to influence you. You can allow other people to lead you, but at the end of the day, you're making the decision. And I kind of view that like my schedule too. Now, sometimes I can say, and some of you out there right now are thinking, but my boss tells me. You're still deciding to listen to your boss. Let's be honest. There's a ton of other things that you don't listen to your boss in. Come on, right?
I don't know. My supervisor's pretty chill, so kind of set my own schedule.
So, it is. Listen, I get it. There are some different things. Hopefully you listen to your spouse, and hopefully when your spouse asks you to do things, you say, how high,
Sure.
But I do think sometimes I get frustrated with my pace of life when I'm the one that is setting or allowing the pace to be done.
Well, and we're going to talk about in a future episode, I think it'll tie really well into all this, is talking about like trying to juggle a bivocational ministry.
Yeah.
Or even if you're not bivocational per se. I mean, listen, your side hustle is a second job. Just stop lying to yourself and just call it a second job.
Right.
And that's fine. Like all of us, I mean, Kyle, you and I both, at the time of this recording,
we
both
got side
have
hustles.
2 jobs.
Woo!
Second jobs, side hustles.
Second jobs.
I have a meeting this afternoon where I got to go meet with someone for an outside client. Like, I have to set schedules, and sometimes you're stuck with that. But yeah, like you said, we are the masters of our schedules, but sometimes we're kind of tied to having to have those schedules. And so that's the topic of this conversation today: is how do you handle juggling all the different aspects of your life, especially when they don't actually coincide? Because we've often talked about,
absolutely,
inside your ministry,
right,
handling all this stuff. But what about when the things don't actually work together? They actually are opposite things entirely.
100%. And we can talk about this a little later, but I heard an illustration years ago about in the old vaudeville type shows, the guys with the spinning plates. Like they would get the one plate spinning and then they'd get the other plate spinning. And listen, you can spin a lot of plates. And some of you out there are really good at spinning plates. The problem with spinning plates is you got to keep them spinning.
Yep.
You got to keep them spinning. And if you don't, stuff comes crashing down.
Yeah.
And again, we can talk about that a little bit. So Josh, you know that this morning has been an interesting morning.
Yeah.
Couple different things. Let me walk you through my morning. So today, camp ended, and we were sending people off.
The week 4 of camp.
Week 4 of camp ended.
Yeah, not all of camp. You still have 4 more weeks.
Yeah. No. And so at that time, I had 3 counselors that were outside counselors that had come in and with love and grace had come in, and I really wanted to say thank you to them and send them off. So they're going, okay, Kyle, where are you at? Where are you at? They're trying to find me at the same time that a problem happened, or I found out about a problem, and a mom was like, I want to talk to the camp director. And so I had one of my unit leaders call me, and I said, hey, he said, I think I've got the situation dealt with. He said, but Kyle, it might be good for this person to hear from the camp director. Well, I agree. And when I've got that opportunity, but I said, hey, could that person wait? He said, yes, I'm talking to them at the same time that I had a disciplinary situation that was going on that we had to walk through, and we had to have some loving corrective conversation. And so,
and your co-host is texting you simultaneously.
And my co-host is texting me simultaneously. I literally am in a van passing my wife as she's driving out in our van. And I said, hold up. But she stopped too late. And then there was a car behind us. And so I said, I'll call you. I called her. Hey, what's your schedule today? Hey, this is my schedule today, which was already different from what we talked about last night. And then to top it all off, I have a couple that is moving towards getting married, and they're trying to process their paperwork, and they said, can you sign our legal marriage license today? And I'm going, this is the weirdest plate spinning day I've got going on. And can I just say, it is so good to have a good team around me who graciously works and says, all right, hey, I can wait. I literally, during that time, had a student say, hey, there's a missions trip coming up. Could you answer some of my questions? And I just said, hey, bud, I need you to wait. And everybody had said, hey. And so I got to, handle it one by one by one. Yeah. And man, just it's good to have a good understanding team.
How do you pick for yourself, at least? How do you pick what to prioritize, especially? Because here's the thing. We talked about, like I said, sometimes the 2 things that you have to juggle are unrelated to one another. Like, my side job, my family, my church, and my full-time job, all those things, they all attach to each other, but they're all different. All the things you just mentioned are technically all inside of your full-time day job.
Right.
How do you juggle, or I guess, how do you decide
I work at night too.
What to juggle? I don't doubt it.
So I would say this. First of all,
communicate to those people too.
Yeah. So first of all, a couple different things that I have to force myself, and I wish I didn't say I have to force myself, but I have to force myself to do. Number one, I've got to pause and pray. Josh, there are so many times I just run through the system and I don't pause to pray, and I don't say, God, you and your divine sovereignty knew that all these things converging at this moment right here, we're going to converge at this moment. Give me grace, give me understanding, help me to be kind. The second thing is, Josh, I have to choose to be kind.
Yeah.
Here's why I have to choose to be kind. That mom who had a situation that happened with her camper, for her, that was the most important of all my things.
Oh, yeah, that's a good perspective.
For the student in the disciplinary situation, I don't want this person just hanging out and kind of like waiting to have the conversation. That's awkward.
Yeah.
And in their mind, that's the most important thing. For this couple who's trying to get their marriage license signed, understanding that it's not their actual marriage ceremony, but I'm sitting here going, and so I had a little conversation. We had a brief little, like, my marriage charge that I give to couples. I said, hey, listen, I said, guys, I take this very seriously. I'm not just signing a piece of paper. Like, legally, in the eyes of the government, you are married now.
Yeah.
Man, this couple just blew me away. If I didn't feel like it would embarrass them, I would list their names just because, man, I was so proud of them that they said, hey, we're going to stay in our roles. We're going to stay in our function. We're not going to operate like a married couple. We're just going to, and I'm like, the humility. Yeah. And so honestly, in that moment, I wanted to deem them as the most important. And I'm sure for them, they were like, we don't want to hang around all day. Like,
Sure.
And so, like, everybody in those moments, we have to remember, everybody, they think they're the most important, and they each are.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
At the same time, we want them to know, excuse me, I'm being pulled in 5 different directions, which really, I'm saying I'm the most important.
Well, that was my next question: is do you let people know that you're juggling?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes, like for instance, the counselors that I was saying goodbye to, they were all counselors from a ministry. Okay, so I don't think, no, it won't be a problem. So I found out literally last week, we talked about the fact that I'm, bivocational with this other job.
Yeah.
They let me know they've hired the other guy. Now,
Oh, did they?
technically they haven't hired him.
Yeah.
But like, there's no reason why he shouldn't be hired. By the way, if this comes out and he was
in a couple months,
really, really awkward,
Yeah, in a couple
but guess
months you'll
what?
find out.
There's no reason why it shouldn't have happened. They were from this ministry, and man, these 3 students came in, counseled, just did a fantastic job. And so I wanted to say to them, hey, you'll see me for a couple Sundays, but then you won't see me for a while, because I think it's right that I press pause and I step away so that other guy, even though he's a friend of mine, and even though I don't think he would mind if I was there, I think it's important for me to step away so that he can step in.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that with Bream last week.
Okay. I couldn't remember if we talked about that aspect.
Well, because he talked about what's that transition time look like? How often do you step away? And
so I wanted to be able to say goodbye to those 3 counselors for a little bit of time, because man, I've formed a really good connection with them, and was so honored and blessed that they stepped in to help out and get involved.
Yeah.
And man, they just conducted themselves. And so I wanted them to feel important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think every single one of them would understand and did understand that I couldn't take as much time as I wanted to.
Well, and it's sometimes I think we're also like, we are in our head, we think, okay, juggling's a bad thing. And I think oftentimes it can be a bad thing, like how much are you juggling, I guess, can come off as a bad thing.
Right.
Even personally, I got given an opportunity. An opportunity doesn't mean it's the Lord's calling automatically, and I've been praying a lot about it. Opportunity to take off, I guess, some of the load of things I've been juggling.
Yeah.
Had an opportunity to do that, and spent the last week and a half praying really intensely, and asked the Lord, I even asked him, I said, would you make it your will so that I can do this thing?
Yeah.
To not have to juggle as much?
Yeah.
And it wasn't an audible voice at all, but I had an actual, I could tell the Lord saying no,
Aren't those the best moments?
they are. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was praying that God would kind of release me from the calling and say, hey, give me this other calling, would you please? So I don't have to, because I'm tired, I'm stressed. My son is teething right now. And so we're not sleeping through the night. And so I'm feeling all of that juggling coming together. Right. My daughter's also, in the throes of potty training and is wetting the bed, 3 or 4 times a week. And so trying to clean up the sheets in the middle of the night and dealing with all that. And, those little family juggles, then the work juggles and all that. And there was a part of me that said, Lord, am I juggling too much? And I brought it before the Lord. I held out all the little juggling pins and I said, can you take some away? And then I got a resounding no. It's almost frustrating sometimes though, to be in a spot where you feel like the end's in sight, little light at the end of the tunnel. And
then you realize it's a train.
Yeah, you just keep going. And
so my boss says that all the time. Hey, I see a light at the tunnel and I don't think it's a train,
Are you tired of feeling like you're on a treadmill that never stops? The constant cycle of lesson prep, event planning, and administrative duties that can leave you feeling burnt out and disconnected from the very students you're trying to reach. Here's some good news. Word of Life Youth Ministries is offering a free youth group series that's packed with tools to save you time and help you reconnect with your students. Each lesson comes with detailed teaching notes, small group guides, and engaging discussion starters, so you spend less time planning and more time engaging. Their Parent Connect feature keeps parents informed, building a stronger community around the ministry without extra effort on your part. And with the Multiply app, tracking your students' spiritual growth and rewarding their progress is a breeze. Imagine a youth ministry where you're not bogged down by endless tasks. A ministry where you actually enjoy spending time with your students and see the impact firsthand. Doesn't that sound refreshing? Head over to the link in the show notes and download your free youth group series today. It's time to breathe new life into your ministry.
Okay, so that brings up a good point, because here's an interesting thing that happened.
Yeah.
All right. So in the span of all these different things, I'm riding my golf cart up because this week we changed our golf carts out. We have them serviced. We have them looked at. Just make sure that we're maintaining a good use of them, and if there's anything that's wrong. And as I'm driving up, I see my daughter. Can I tell you, in that moment, all I wanted to do was stop and hug my daughter and have a good conversation with her.
Yeah.
But I can even realize, and I saw in her eyes, she was headed somewhere.
Oh.
And sometimes, okay, let's
Yeah.
be honest, parents, just hold on, okay, for 2 seconds. There are some times when we are overstressed, we allow that overstress to be put on other people when we're like, I'm trying to make the time for everybody and everybody just needs, I'm just asking for somebody to make time for me. Well, maybe not.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? And so I waved at my daughter. I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And she was like, "Hi." And I just said, "You know what? That's okay. That's okay." And in that moment, my flesh said, I'm trying to take care of so many other people. And how in the world can she not? But you know what? That's a wrong reaction. That's
don't
an
want my daughter to grow up.
unkind reaction.
Teenagers, like my daughter not being excited to see me. Here's the thing, that's
It wasn't
normal.
that she wasn't excited
No,
to
I
see
know,
me.
but it's
She
like-
she had a place.
No, I know, but that's normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like right now, my daughter, like, she runs to the door and like I'm not looking forward to like her getting older. I actually said that yesterday.
And the cat's in the cradle and the
Yeah.
silver spoon. Little boy blue and the man in the moon. So here's the deal. What do? I
Yeah.
try to pause and pray.
Yeah.
I try to make sure that I don't take my frustration from a situation into another situation. And
yeah.
I can struggle with that. There are times, Josh, I've had to
Sure.
go back and I've had to say to people, hey, I needed to correct you, but I should not have done it in the way that I did it. And I'm so sorry that I allowed a frustration over here
Yeah.
to influence over here. There are some times I try to start out right away. Like, for instance, when I got up to the mom, I said, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that it took me as long as it did. And she said, no problem. I understand you're a busy man.
That's nice.
And again, it honestly helped me go,
Yeah.
all right. And so to kind of talk with her, with the situation with the person that needed to have the correction,
Yeah.
the counselor that needed to have correction, I was able to enlist other people and other leaders to walk through that situation. But I thought that it was important for me to be able to look at that young person in the face and say, hey, I love you. We have to walk through some correction. I'm not able to be here because I've got some other things, but I just need you to know I'm proud of you for this and this and this. I was proud of you for the way you handled this,
Yeah.
but sometimes there still has to be some consequence for the things that we do. But I want you to know that and honestly, like I got up, I hugged that person and they hugged me back and they honestly, before I left, they said, hey, thank you so much. And thanks so much for stopping by and having this conversation. Like,
Yeah.
and I was able to walk out and go, I know I don't deal with everything perfect, like far from it.
Yeah.
But I felt like, okay, Lord, I was able to help that person
Yeah.
feel valuable.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still go back and I know I've probably shared this, do a planning meeting with your people. But I still remember my camp director saying, hey, your job is to take care of your people and to value them, to show
Yeah.
them value, even in correction.
Yeah.
And so if I can pray, if I can try to choose wisely, if I can try to not to bring that on. But there are sometimes, Josh, I got to allow somebody else to deal with stuff that sometimes I think I'm the only one that should deal with it. And maybe I'm not.
Delegating the juggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part too, is like sometimes you look at the juggling pins that you're tossing in the air and you have to kind of look, okay, which of these could I pass off to somebody else? I've talked to my wife a little bit about that because the other thing that I do, the other gig that I have with working, but I have multiple clients. I've talked to her about like, hey, would you be interested in like managing the projects and the client communication and stuff? And right now the answer is just like, hey, no, like I can't. Like, because my wife also works a part-time job and then is also stay-at-home mom. Like, she's busy as well.
Best
And
job in the world.
Yeah, she's amazing at it, and I'm really thankful for her. But there's times where I have to look at the stuff I'm juggling, and I've asked her and said like, hey, can you do this? And she's been honest, like, hey, I don't think this is something I can do right now unless, if the thing escalates in balloons and it becomes a viable business where she doesn't do the second job or whatever, which that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right.
Those are the kind of times where I've said, but like being willing to let some of those things go. I'm sure you deal with that a lot more than I do.
Well, and I will even say this, Josh, there are times, here are two mistakes sometimes that I've made. Not equipping the person to handle the load that I'm asking them to handle.
Yeah.
That's not fair to them.
Sure.
That's not fair to them. I've had staff members come back to me and go, I was willing to do that, but I felt really unprepared. And so kind of I try to go, okay, how can I make that right? Going back and debriefing with them, admitting where I was wrong. Hey, I'm so sorry. You're right. I should have talked to you about this. I should have talked to you about this. That part of that is sharing the load ahead of time. Part of that is making sure that sometimes the load that I'm sharing with other people is not just the unfun stuff.
Yeah.
But I think bringing your team in and sharing the fun stuff with them as well.
Yeah.
Kind of having that situation. And there's other times that I've made the mistake and I've had people say, hey, you really were the one that should have dealt with this instead of dealing with this. I've had conversations with parents where they've said, I didn't want to talk to the assistant camp director. I didn't want to talk to the unit leader. I wanted to talk to you. And there's sometimes I've had to say, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have, I should have been the one to pick up the phone and to call you or interact with you.
Yeah. Well, there's often times when we're passing those things off to other people and you look, I think it's the first thing I always do is I look at somebody else and I go, okay, how much do you have on your plate?
Right.
How much are you juggling? If I could even say that might not even be a fair enough question because when I look at someone and say, okay, you're juggling 3 things, I'm juggling 7 things.
Yep.
Therefore, I could pass off more of what I'm juggling to you.
Yep.
That's the first thought I have. But you have to ask yourself, what's the capacity of the individual that you're passing and delegating to of what they can actually juggle?
Yep.
Because there's been times where I've, not my wife, but in the professional sense, where I've looked at other people and I said, listen, I think you have a little more time to do what is happening right now.
Yep.
I'm really busy and I have this, or maybe I'm juggling 2 really big things and I need you to take this third small thing that's about to be put on my plate. But asking also, are they capable, not even like, do they understand what they're doing? Are they capable of handling what they need to do?
Well, and I think part of that is equipping our team.
Yeah.
Realizing there might be somebody on your team that deals with that stuff better than you do. And it might even be the thing that you really like doing.
Yeah. Oh,
but you can't do everything. Okay. Like for instance, this summer, my boss, due to some different circumstances said, hey, I'm going to be up in New York all summer long.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can do this. Bro, I'll be honest with you. I did not realize how much I leaned on my boss and leaned into my boss. Even just knowing that he was here, And so it's been a great opportunity. It's been a great growth situation for me, which has been great. But it's forced me to realize that there's some other things I don't have to do because I can't do it all.
Yeah.
And so kind of looking through those different things, there's been a couple different times where I've been like, oh, why? Lord, why did you decide for him not to be here during this time?
Yeah.
And it has honestly grown, developed, stretched my leadership lid in doing that because the best thing right now is for him to be there and for me to not him. But guess what? That's forced me to lean on my team. So Josh, for the first 3 weeks of camp, I did not preach one time.
Oh, not even for the salvation message?
I didn't preach the salvation message. I didn't preach the dedication message.
Oh, okay.
For the first 3 weeks of camp. Now, shouldn't say that. On the 3rd week, I did the gospel and I did the dedication.
So for 2 weeks.
But the first with the training week and stuff. I shouldn't say that because I did preach. Well, anyways, regardless, whatever. Okay, I did it all.
2 weeks.
I did it all. Well, but again, can I tell you, man, I was sitting there going, man, I really miss getting up there.
Yeah.
I really miss getting up there. But honestly, it was the best thing for my stress level. It was the best thing for my voice. It was the best thing for all this different stuff. It was the best thing for my wife. The other day I was home and she was going through a little bit of a rough time and I knew I could step out and I could go and drive my golf cart around. But I looked at her and I said, hey, would it be okay if I just stayed home with you? And my wife started crying a little bit. She was like, wow. Like she felt so valued in that moment because I could have done all these other things. I could have been the speaker in these other areas. I didn't have to be.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go do that other thing.
Yeah.
I love riding around and greeting people.
Yeah.
But I love making sure my wife is happy.
Well, yeah.
I love preaching, but I love watching my team develop and grow. And there's this one guy on my team that we asked to preach a thing. And can I tell you, he has done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And it's something that I could have done. But man, I have been so proud of him.
Yeah.
And he even came to me the other day and just said, man, it means so much that you guys would trust me to do this.
Yeah. Is he someone who hasn't preached a lot before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's done some different things. I knew he was capable. It wasn't like, you want to preach for the very first time,
Yeah.
But it was really, really cool
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
and I would say this, Josh, so not only pray, not only get my pace, not only make sure that I'm not taking my frustration to other things. Sometimes it's finding other people to step in. But I'll be honest with you, Josh, I've got to make sure I'm being healthy on the other side.
Sure.
Whether that's setting boundaries,
Yep.
whether that's me setting some healthy boundaries and going, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be the one to handle this. And sometimes I think you got to do that with family. And sometimes I think you got to do that with the job. And sometimes I think you got to do that with yourself.
Yeah.
To set those healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And say, I'm not going to be able to do everything and I shouldn't do everything. And I'm going to make sure that I'm, and I think sometimes we can go to the extreme of, I've just got to make sure that I'm so healthy. And you should. You should. But sometimes I can swing the pendulum too far that way.
Absolutely.
And I don't deal with the things that I should be dealing with. But making sure that I'm, can I go someplace potentially, I'm going to go there.
Do it.
Josh, sometimes I think we've learned to go off of the endorphin high of being needed.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I feel that. I think
I'm the only one that can step into this situation. You all need me.
Well, I think especially as men, like in our families, we feel that. We feel the desire to be needed.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's innately bad.
No, but it can be.
Well, sure. I think, anything can be. I mean, like, you could take too much of medicine and overdose. Like, you can take too much of something and make it a bad thing. But I think the innate desire to be needed is built into us as men, as leaders.
Yes.
But I mean, obviously, we have to be intentional about.
But I think we got to. So I had a guy one time say to me, we got to the end of a summer, and he said, "Hey, so tell me about this summer." And I said, "Man, he said, you know what?" And my first response was the number of decisions. And he said, "Okay, great, whatever." And I said, "What do you mean, whatever? We saw X people make the decision to say yes to Jesus," and he said, "Well, but did they really? He was pushing back on that." And he said, "Kyle, can I just," he said, "I realized I was living off of the excitement and endorphin rush of seeing kids, the numbers of ones coming down, making that decision." And so he said, and so I realized that when the level didn't come down that I want, he said, I wasn't that excited. He said, I realized I wasn't excited when the one kid trusted Christ.
Yeah.
I realized when he said, but he said, Kyle, I think the numbers are great and I'm excited for the numbers.
Sure.
But make sure you're falling in love with Jesus more than you are with the numbers.
Yeah.
And it was a good challenge. But I think sometimes I do that with the amount that people need me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, Josh, I'll be honest with you. At the end of camp, this place becomes a little bit of a ghost town. And I've got to make sure that on that other side, I'm not like, oh, I'm useless now. Now that nobody needs me. And again, being able to have my team step in, making sure that I'm taking time with my family. I mean, we all know the old adage: if you don't spend time with your spouse, what are you going to do when it's back to just being you and your spouse, right?
Yeah.
So I think we just got to be careful with stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you this, Josh.
Yeah, sure.
What are ways that you have sought to set up healthy boundaries? Because you and I, listen, let's be honest. You are a very talented individual. You bring a lot of awesome qualities and expertise and expertise is the right, but like you bring a lot to the table. I know you've got to say no to some different things.
Yeah.
I know there's some things that you would like to say no to that you can't say no to.
Sure.
How are you developing healthy boundaries and limitations for yourself and your family?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you. I mean, that's kind of you to say. I think what it comes down to is I'm overly communicative. Communicative.
I like it. Communicative.
Yeah, with my supervisor, and just tell him like, hey, like we had to rework my schedule to accommodate for the second job that I have because I have to. And I said like, hey, you're going to get this much out of me instead because I need to do this thing. And then you're only going to get that much, which means I'm going to say no to more stuff. It means we need to be more intentional and efficient with our time when we do these things. I think the way that I handle juggling things is I just kind of, I don't know. I don't know if maybe a lot of you guys are out there like this. I just kind of know what I want for my limit, not necessarily what my limits are. the problem is that what I want for my limits and versus what my family wants for my limits are different. And I've told this story before. I had to have. My wife said once of like, hey, when are you going to start doing stuff around our house instead of stuff for the neighbor's house? Because I was just constantly over there, like replaced their entire sprinkler system, or like the module that's under the ground. I can't remember what it's all called. We just YouTubed everything and figured it out. But like it got to a point where my wife said, like, when are you going to do that stuff around our house? And like that's how I determine what my juggling limits are. Is I kind of just plow ahead. And then I kind of assess as I'm going through, okay, what do I want? What does my family want? And then you can ask the people here, I always prioritize what my family wants first up to what is actually actionable. Like, and my wife's like, hey, I don't want you to do anything at the office and just stay home and do stuff around the house all the time. Obviously, that's not actionable. I need to be here to get work done. And so I just kind of, I don't know. I don't really have a good system. Are you? I don't know. You're probably that way too. In some
I
ways.
absolutely am.
Yeah,
That's
where
why
you
I was
just
looking
kind of-
for you to tell us what
No, I have no system.
So
I just kind of just figure it out.
So I would say this. Some of the things that I am forcing myself to do
Yeah. Build
is that delegation.
Well, and delegation. I was gonna say I build policy in my job
Right.
to help with that stuff. Where at like someone comes to me and I say, okay, the policy is that if you come to me with this project, I'm going to tell you, hey, it's too late. And sometimes I've had departments come to me and say, hey, we want to do this thing. And I say, if you want this, it's going to be for next year's curriculum or for next year's event or whatever. So you're a year and a half away from getting that thing. And their response is okay, we're going to go do it over here. Well, you're going to get less quality potentially because you rushed it.
Yeah.
You're going to end up with more frustration and you're going to end up having to redo it. And you know how much we all love to say, I told you so. There's a situation in my head where that literally happened, where someone said, hey, we want to do this thing. I said, you can't. I'm not willing to juggle everything else and put it aside to do this thing. I don't have time to.
Right.
And I'm choosing not to. And they went and did it themselves, and then they had to redo it. And so, that stuff happens. And so, I think knowing yourself and then building up an ability to be intentional about communicating without thinking that you are the answer to all the problems.
Yep.
I really wanted there to be another answer to the problem. I just didn't think there was.
Yep.
So I think knowing those things, being gracious, and then also being humble, and those are all things, I constantly have to work at. I'm sure you have to work on them as well, is that grace, especially of being gracious of like, hey, I'm right, but like maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I had that happen today actually with some training content. I was like, I actually said out loud, oh, I hope I'm wrong with this right now, because if I'm not, then it's someone else's fault. I'd rather just be my fault so I can just own up to it and say, it ended up being my fault. So that was actually
And
kind of nice.
congratulations.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. Juggling something and
So
being my
again,
fault.
I think with that delegation,
Yeah.
I think my boss sat down with us in camp leadership about a year ago and said, hey, he's got a thing. Who do you report to?
Oh,
Who
yeah.
is the one that's the actionable command with dealing with it? What are times that you just communicate? Hey, we've already this person who's responsible made this action, but we're
Yeah.
communicating to you and just kind of walking through those different things. And again, I think a lot of times we don't set up that system. Or we have a system and then we don't work the system.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I'm not developing that person. I know there used to be the whole I do, you watch, you and I do together, you do, I watch, you do on your own.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can do that. And sometimes you're like, hey, I need you to do this. So I think, again, setting up boundaries, setting up expectations, setting up a plan to do that. But again, I've got to make sure that I am allowing my team to have some of those wins, and then I'm celebrating those teams' wins.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly how you need to do it. I think the policy thing I talked about earlier, but building up a what'd you call it? Not policy, you called it
A delegation list, a priority list.
No. I can't remember what it was now, but building up. Well, I'll use the word policy for now. Building up policy, and then what you're going to do each time when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, can you take this on as well?" Or what it takes to delegate and all that stuff. I think that's the hardest part for me is actually following through with a system that I've built. But yeah, as of right now, I just kind of just wing it. Is that a bad place to be?
No, but I would say this. I would say if you find yourself at a place where you feel like you're doing a whole lot but not actually finishing anything,
Yeah.
you got to make sure you're finishing the things. You got to make sure
Well,
that you're seeing it through,
Yeah.
or you're able to hand it off to somebody and then you're checking back in to make sure that
Yeah.
it's seen through.
Well, what if you're also juggling enough stuff? You know that you're juggling enough stuff, and you say, "Hey, I can't do anymore." I'm in a situation where my supervisor trusts that. When I say, "Hey, here's what I've done this week.
100%.
Can't do it can't do anymore. Blank. Here you go." What if that's not the situation you're in? What if there's someone who says, "Hey, I know you're doing this much. I know you've built policy. You're following it. I know you say you can't do anymore. I need you to do more anyway."
So I go back to when I set up kind of discipleship, one-on-one mentoring relationships. I walk through some different things. Say, hey, here are kind of my base level foundational expectations, because I believe that unspoken expectations are typically unmet expectations,
Yeah.
and unspoken expectations are typically unfair expectations. And so you want to see your expectations met. Talk about it. Talk regularly about it, address the status of it, all those different things.
Yeah.
You get what you inspect, not what you expect.
Yeah.
But I'll sit there and I'll talk with the people and I'll say, hey, whether we want to do a book study or go through a book of the Bible or go through like a book or whatever,
Yeah.
I'll say, listen, I don't know your life. I don't know what's happening in your world. Whether there's sometimes I've met with guys that are married, that have a family. There's other times I've met with young guys before they're married. There's other times I've met with high schoolers. But
Yeah.
all three of them, I will give the onus of, hey, I don't know your life. So as we talk week to week and we decide on what our like homework is or what we're going to do, I need you to be honest with me as I'm going to be honest
what
with
you can
you.
do.
Hey, this week, Kyle, I've got a ton on my plate. My boss is asking, or my wife is asking, or my kids are asking, or my fiance is asking, or
Yeah.
high school is asking, whatever. I don't think, and there's sometimes I'll look at them and I'll go, okay, instead of doing 2 chapters this week, let's do 1 chapter.
Yeah.
Or, hey, you know what? Let's just not do any chapters.
Yeah.
There's other times I'll look at them and say, hey, you know what? I understand. I'm going to ask you to do, which kind of gets a
Yeah.
little interesting when it's like an adult or a married guy rather
Yeah.
than like
It's
a
not just
high
some
schooler.
kid. Yeah.
But even still, there are some times my boss has looked at me and said, hey, Kyle, I understand.
Yeah.
I really need this to get done.
Yeah.
And there are times I've looked at my boss and said, okay, what do you not want me to do so that I can do this?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
there-
You've given that advice.
And there
before.
are some times he's looked at me and said, I need you to do it all, and I need you to figure out how you can do it all.
Yeah.
I then try to make sure I don't just give up, I don't just quit, and I kind of work through that, but I keep him apprised of the situation.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I had a guy one time, I asked him to do something. He kind of came back to me and said, hey, I just don't think that that's possible. And I said, well, I think it is. And he came back a second time, hey, I really don't think this is possible. So I sat down and we talked about, hey, if you do this and this and this and this and this. And he reluctantly said, okay, fine. And I said, no, you can do this. And at the end of it, he didn't
Yeah.
get it done, but he stopped communicating with me. And here's my problem. I stopped checking in with him.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to the end of it and I had a conversation with him of, hey, I told you I wanted this done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I told you I couldn't do it. I then told you, and we worked out the schedule where I think it could be done.
Yeah.
You're a fully grown adult individual. Yeah, but Kyle, you should have checked in with me. You're absolutely right. I should have come back and checked in with you. But it feels like literally 5 minutes after we had that conversation, you just gave up.
That could be, yeah.
That's not what I did. I understand that's not what you did, but this is the way that it's coming across.
Yeah.
And I think just having those conversations.
No, sure. And I think I have one last thought. I think is I think I've named it. It's the Scotty mentality, like from Star Trek, where he always said, "Oh, I've given it everything," and then all of a sudden he finds a little bit more to be able to give.
Yeah.
I think if you live constantly at a place where you can comfortably juggle everything, then when something comes into your life where it's, "Hey, can you do this as well?" you can take on that odd thing,
Right.
and juggle it as well.
Right.
I think that's where I actually find myself, because like I said, I don't really know
Yeah.
what my policy is or what my, how I figure it out. I think what I actually do is I go until I can feel comfortable. I go until I can say, okay, I can play video games once or twice a week with my friends
Yep.
and not feel like I have too much to do. That's my comfortable spot.
Yep.
Because with the side thing that I'm doing, I'm working 3 or 4 nights a week, typically doing stuff for outside clients. And so, if that's what my week looks like and that's a comfortable amount of juggle, then when I get the odd project that's going to take up a whole week of evenings, I can do it. And so I think that's kind of my policy, is just I kind of go until I feel comfortable. And
Yep.
then I say, okay, this is what I can or can't do now.
Yep.
And then communicating. Like
Well,
you said.
and I think you need to do that. So one of the things that my wife and I did, and we try to regularly do, we're not as great about it as we should be, but we try to have check-in points.
Oh, yeah.
Where we map out the next month, we map out the next couple months. It happened because I was on tour with Word of Life doing something
Yeah.
that I enjoyed doing, something that my boss asked me to do, but something that I excitedly agreed to do.
Yeah.
But I was out on the road and we got on the phone and I said, oh, hey, I want to make sure here's a couple different things that are coming up. And she said, can you do me a favor? And I said, yeah. She goes, can you just take a blank piece of paper and can you go through your calendar? I said, babe, I've got them all. And she's like, no. Take a blank piece of paper, draw out a calendar for the next couple months, the next 3 months. And I want you to mark where you are. Like, I'm busy and I'm like focus time at the office.
Yeah.
I think mark in a different color days that you're just going to be at the office. Then mark in a different color days that you're taking off. Then mark in a different color days that you're going to be gone. And I realized I was not being fair to my family.
Yeah.
And it was not until I listed all those things out. And so at that time, I had 2 different bosses who worked together, but 2 different bosses.
Yeah.
And I called the one and I said, I can't do this, this, and this. And he said, well, I need you to do this, this, and this. And I said, can I just do this and this?
Yeah.
And at the end of that conversation, he actually got it down to, can you zoom in for this meeting?
Yeah.
Can you just be at this meeting and I'll let you out of this other one? And I was like, oh, this was awesome. The other boss said, hey, absolutely. We got to take care of your family and do that. I think sometimes we all go, well, I'm just a really good multitasker. Let's be absolutely honest.
Yeah.
Multitasking just means you care a little bit less about certain things and you care a little bit more about other things. Now, it might be in the hour. It might be in the day. It might be in the week. You cannot give the same priority to everything. You can't.
No, you can't. No.
It's impossible. And so sometimes I would encourage you, my wife and I do this really, really well during the winter season. I take every Monday, I take her out to Panera. We talk about the last week. We talk about the next week. We then talk about the rest of this month and the next month. And we just go, okay, let's kind of stay ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it has just been a really, really good priority. My wife then has put up a calendar in the hallway that is visibly accessible to everybody. And she puts my stuff down and her stuff down and the family stuff down. And so sometimes she'll just go, hey, I'm looking out at this. I feel like we're getting a little busy. And just having that communication point to it. But I would encourage you, which takes me back to planning meetings. If you do planning meetings
with your family.
and with your family.
That's funny.
No, but seriously. So,
Well, good.
Really, listen, Josh, it's a never-ending conversation. I know there's some of you out there, you disagree with us. I'm okay with you disagreeing with us. In fact, I would love to know your ideas of how are you juggling those things? How are you splitting those?
I think listening back to this, I'll even find
spinning
things
those plates.
I think listening back to this, I'll even find things that I'm like, I don't really know how I feel about what I said even there. Like, this is such a moving topic in my head of like, how do I even handle the juggling stuff that I don't even know if I'd agree with myself in a couple weeks.
Well, and I know I said one more thing. Let me say this. My oldest daughter is going into her senior year.
Yeah.
You better believe I'm going to prioritize this next year different than I've prioritized other years.
Yeah.
At the same time, if I have not been spending the time to develop that relationship with my daughter, this is going to be a really interesting year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, praying for you in that then for sure.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. I think that's it. So.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, small group was canceled for this week.
It's also well into lunchtime.
It's just you and I.
Yeah.
This is small group.
This is small group. One big small group.
Well, Josh, I appreciate it. I got to go to the next thing.
Everybody check us out on Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere, social media, YouTube, wherever you find your podcast. Email us at stackingchairspod@wol.org with any thoughts, any questions, whatever. We're back. We're 4th, 5th episode back.
That's right. Hey, make sure that you like, subscribe, share, comment, post. But most importantly, Josh, make sure that you stack those chairs.